Richard, thanks for joining us. A well-received presentation this morning, I'm sure you'll agree.
Thank you.
You mentioned within your presentation Low Carbon Programmes Guide. Perhaps you could elaborate a little bit more.
Yeah, the Carbon Trust have just updated and relaunched our Carbon Trust Guide to help public sector bodies think through how they can finance low carbon projects, which is clearly one of the big barriers to taking projects forwards, is actually understanding what the different opportunities are to get hold of external funding to drive projects through, but also guides to how you actually procure and contract with organisations to drive projects forwards. So there's the challenge of getting the money, and then the challenge of using that money effectively to implement a project. So the guide tackles some of these big issues that public sector bodies are concerned by.
And you recommend obviously public sector get involved in that?
Yes, it's a resource that public sector bodies can use, and I'd recommend that they do that to help them overcome some of those challenges. So that's available. One
of the topics that you mentioned was sort of got a bit of reaction, I suppose, was the population growth, which obviously affects carbon economy. What would you mean behind that?
So I think you can't just talk about climate change in isolation. You need to think about the big international picture and other key trends, and clearly population growth is an important trend within that. So economic growth is a good thing. It helps to support a bigger, healthier population. But population growth itself will obviously have some key challenges for us to manage, particularly for the public sector. So the UN projects that population will increase from 6 billion to 9 billion by 2050. That's a significant increase, and with that, the OECD forecasts a 3 billion increase in the middle classes. So why is that important? It's because these people that can actually buy more are going to have a bigger carbon footprint, and just the sheer enormity of these changes will have an impact on land use, stress on water, and of course a whole host of carbon-related issues will follow from that.
So, and of course, that obviously, like you say, then ups the carbon footprint. Are the targets that they've got realistic, Richard? Are we on target?
So I think that despite a global economic recession and very fierce warnings from climate scientists, carbon emissions increase, not unabated, but still increasing, and that needs to be dealt with. So we are seeing some improvements internationally. Within the UK, our domestic footprint is down, looking back over to 1950, but overall our carbon emissions are 10% up, and that's due to the carbon related to manufactured goods that we import. So it's very important to think not just about our domestic energy efficiency, but to think much more broadly about our place within a global economy, and therefore the impact related to all the goods and services that we procure that have an embodied carbon in themselves. So what we procure as individuals and as public sector bodies is critical to that.
One of the problems with financial constraints in frameworks is that they run on cost rather than sustainability, which is understandable because they want to bring the cost down. How do we overcome that?
So we need to work within our organisations to help articulate the business case behind thinking about the whole life cycle costs of a purchase we make. So we shouldn't be buying the cheapest, we should be buying the most energy efficient over the long term. That will impact on many other costs that are related to that. So there are different things that public sector bodies can do. I think public sector bodies should comply as far as they can with government buying standards that will give them some support in how they specify low carbon and take that forwards. Public sector bodies should be aware of government's energy technology list, which basically provides guidance as to the key technologies that are top quartile energy efficient products. And I think public sector bodies can learn from that list of energy efficient technologies that are regarded to be top quartile, but also ensure that their suppliers buy top quartile technologies themselves. Indeed, the private sector can benefit from tax relief relating to products listed on the energy technology list. So there's a good business case even from that perspective. And the public sector body can engage in the list, but also help communicate the tax benefits to its private sector partners of that list.
And did that fall into the other part that you came there? You talked about you asked for businesses to become more focused. Does that fall into that category?
Yes, I think public sector and private sector collaboration is really important. I think that public sector bodies can help use their purchasing power to shape the market. So we can start to, as the public sector, send out very clear signals to the suppliers of manufacturers, goods and services, that the types of sustainability specifications that we are looking for. What the private sector can do, of course, is become more conscious of not just carbon, but the wider resource efficiency debate, the fact that materials are becoming more limited and costly, and water and waste are key parts of the issue. So I think collaboration between the public and private sector is very important, and both parties can benefit in that dialogue.
Somebody out on the floor there asked me to ask you to elaborate on the ITCP report.
Yes.
Perhaps you could do that.
So I made reference to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change and its latest report, the assessment report number 5. The report is updated every 5 years, and it's basically the UN's attempt to synthesize different climate change science and to make that actually understandable to the population, which is so critical to us and our confidence around the reality of climate change science. And there's some key things that it points out, and one is that the global trends in terms of increases in terms of climate warming gases is still an upward trend. It also says with even more probability than in the previous report that 95% certainty that that is related to human action. Now that's up by 5%. It was previously 90% 5 years ago. So we are now at a UN-endorsed report level more confident than we were that the climate change and climate warming gases increase is in relation to human action. Something else that it's clear about is the negative impacts that will follow on the basis of these trends, with particular reference to sea level rises and the disastrous impacts that we should expect to see more of if we do not do something to mitigate these rises.
What we're seeing now, and we've had some terrible things happen in recent years regarding this sort of thing, is that attributed to what's going on in climate change? Is like you said then, can we expect to see more and more frequent events like that?
Certainly we would expect to see a greater number of hazardous weather events. Yeah. That coupled with sea level rises is quite disastrous for low-lying areas. Any mild weather event coupled with higher sea levels is something that we're simply not prepared for and will have disastrous impact on. So the issues here aren't just environmental and economic, they're hugely social, and we need to get a better understanding of those costs as well. And
finally, to reach the targets, it's important to, as you said, achieve support or arrive support community partners. It's important that they work together.
Yes, I think there's some real potential great high impact projects and the public sector can take part in. I've seen some really good examples of public sector bodies reaching out to local small businesses. Kent County Council doing a great job in terms of providing energy management training to local small businesses, which is critical at a period when small businesses are struggling to survive and to be able to manage their bottom line better through reducing their energy consumption as a key part of that. So that's great. There are many examples of public sector bodies actually reaching out to their local schools, so local authorities proactively supporting their schools in carbon reduction. Solihull Council doing a very good job of engaging its schools in automated meter reading, actually understanding how you use equipment, stimulating competitions between schools in carbon reduction, and that's also great to see. Warwick District Council, again a good example in terms of an organisation that's engaging its local developers in actually looking at, okay, so what's our carbon target for new build, but also how do you work with your developers to guide them into how you deliver those types of savings. So it's a real partnership between the council and its local developers, making sure that they're aware of low carbon solutions that are relevant to that borough. So there's some good stuff happening.
So in summary then, we're going a long way towards carbon reduction, but we do need to do more.
I think the public sector in the UK has made a fantastic step forward in terms of showing the way. It needs to do more to not just get its own house in order, but to reach out to the local communities in which they sit, to engage as many different organisations more broadly as they can. And I think a key role that the public sector has is education around the return of investment related to energy efficiency, and actually proactively engaging people in what is such a big challenge for us all.
Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Richard.